At 2:21 a.m., I looked at a message from an unknown number on my phone. I'm Dennis's next wife. There had been rumblings about Denis these last few days. I just didn't expect the truth to come out so soon. I paused for just a second, about to type a response, but before I could tap a single key, the sender blew up my phone. A flurry of photos arrived one after another, as if she was sitting with her thumb over the send button, just waiting for my response. The notification chime kept going. Ding. I looked at Angela sleeping peacefully next to me, and I scrambled to hit the silence button. It was 70 photos in all. Dinners, movie nights, weekend getaways, walks down the street holding hands, photo after photo of them playing house like some twisted highlight reel. These weren't just the memory of an affair, they were a slap, the proof of how easily a man's heart can wander. All those tender moments I once felt were mine, were never just mine. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please pennies like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it's traveled. Dennis never truly loved me. He didn't truly love her either. The only person Dennis ever truly loved was Dennis. I don't know if it was intentional or a simple coincidence, but today was the 7-year anniversary of the day Denis and I got married. To say I wasn't heartbroken or angry would be a lie. 7 years. 7 years of loving him, building this home, giving my everything. And now that house is rotten. It's rotten from the inside out, so disgusting it turns your stomach, so gross it makes you cry. I opened all the photos patiently, one by one. I downloaded the originals, saved them all. One of them was particularly interesting. I sent it to a good friend of mine who is a lawyer. When evidence falls into your hands, you don't just delete it, you put it to work. Just as I finished saving the last photo, Denny came in the front door. The sound startled our daughter, Angela. She stirred and let out a soft whimper. I patted her back gently to calm her. Lucy! Denny screamed my name loud, sharp, shredding the night silence. I tucked Angela back in and walked out to the hallway. The man standing in front of me, bloated, sweating, reeking of cologne and alcohol, was unrecognizable. 7 years ago, he was lean and muscular, with defined lines and a sharp jaw. He wasn't movie star handsome, but he was solid, self-assured. Now what are you doing just standing there? He stripped right there in the hallway, clothes stinking of another woman's perfume and cheap whiskey, and threw them on the floor before stumbling towards the shower, completely naked. I bent down to pick up the pile. Even looking at it turned my stomach. When he was done, he flopped onto the bed and began to snore so loudly it rattled the walls. I went back to Angela's room and slid under the covers next to her. This was the 3rd year we'd been sleeping in separate rooms. When Angela was born, Dennis started making excuses. He was too tired, too stressed. He needed to get better sleep. I didn't push him. I thought I was being understanding. My mom had warned me. Couples sleeping apart. It's the beginning of the end. I laughed. I called her old-fashioned. Well, it turns out she was right. I picked up my phone and went through the photos the mistress had sent me. She was younger than me, vaguely familiar, not stunning, just tender, with a girlish, almost childlike air. After a moment, I replied to her, "Nice to meet you." Her status said typing for a good long while, but she never sent anything. I waited a few minutes, then I fell asleep. A mistress's message wasn't worth losing sleep over. The next morning, Angela woke me up by tapping my face with her little fingers. I kissed her soft, warm cheeks. Lucy, my mother-in-law Anna, had arrived. She was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, fluffing up her freshly dyed black curls. From the back, she looked like an ink-soaked poodle. "Are you just getting up now?" "I'm sure the child is starving," she muttered theatrically. She reached out to pick Angela up. Angela ducked away and scampered across the room. "I don't want Grandma," she declared in her sweet baby voice. "This child is so wicked. I have no idea who she gets that temper from. Dennis was an angel at her age." She shot me a withering glare. "Ridiculous." This woman barely helped raise Angela. Half the time she was around, she was nagging her or scolding her. And still she expected love in return. Normally I would ignore her. I'd pretend I didn't hear her. I'd pretend I didn't care, but not today. Not after the lady came knocking. Today I was done pretending. The photos made it easy. No more excuses, no more second chances. Anna, would you shut your mouth? I said dryly as I chopped meat on the kitchen counter. What did you just say? I struck the knife twice forcefully. Then I turned, holding the blade, and stared her dead in the eye. I said, shut your mouth. That morning I prepared breakfast only for Angela and me. The old lady stood there with her lips pursed, speechless. She waddled away to wake up her darling son. Dennis, breakfast is ready. By the time her darling boy got out of bed, Angela and I were already out the door. Where's breakfast? Dennis yelled at the empty, glistening platter. I closed the front door behind me without a word. Mommy, Daddy didn't have breakfast. Mommy makes breakfast for Angela. Daddy's mommy can make breakfast for Daddy. Mommy doesn't have to anymore. Angela blinked and then nodded as if she understood. After dropping Angela off at school, I came home to find Denise and Anna sitting in the living room. They both looked as if they were about to explode. Anna had powdered her face a ghostly white and painted her lips a jarringly bright red. She looked like an aging geisha still clinging to a job she should have quit a decade ago. My father-in-law must have been so lucky. Dennis sat slumped on the couch with his arms crossed, as if he believed he was making a power move. The fat overflowing from under his crossed arms made him look more like a beanbag than a man. You really don't feel warm with all that insulation. Lucy, how could you only make breakfast for yourself? That's outrageous, Anna scolded. I made breakfast for me and Angela, and not for Dennis. Anna, haven't you always said my cooking is awful? Dennis had a business dinner last night. I'm sure he deserves something better this morning. How can you think my food is inedible? I thought he'd like your food more. What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying you don't want this marriage anymore? It's funny how quickly they went off the rails. Maybe I'd been too tolerant all these years, too accommodating. And now that I dared to push back a little, they were acting like I'd burned the house down. Denny tried to glare at me. Back then it might have worked, but now at 6 feet tall and 400 pounds, he looked like a human refrigerator. His eyes, those little crushed beads in his bloated cheeks, barely bigger than raisins or rat droppings. Maybe that's a question you should be asking yourself, I said calmly. Then I pulled out my phone, selected 2 of the juiciest photos of Denis and his mistress, and sent them directly to the family chat. Within seconds, phones began pinging all around the room. While taking the kids to school, I called my best friend Vivian, who conveniently just arrived, and she wasn't alone. Katie, the mistress, showed up as well. Vivian looked at her and immediately moved away as if Katie's mere presence could infect her with something contagious. This is my lawyer, Vivian. From now on, if you have something to say, you can say it to her. Dennis and Anna looked as if they'd been hit with a brick. While Vivian launched into all the legal speak, my parents came in. My father walked in with bloodshot eyes and a face contorted with fury. I had never told him about any of this mess, and now it was all right there in front of him. Dennis, listen closely, Vivian said. The child stays with Lucy. Child support is $2,000 a month. The marital estate will be divided equally. Dennis sat there as if he didn't understand English. Vivian had to repeat it 3 times. Then a loud voice cut in. Absolutely not. I turned around and it was Denise's father, the nouveau riche braggart. Denny didn't come from a wealthy family. The family fortune was recent, and like most men who get rich by accident, he was carried away by the wealth, and now that head was about to burst. Oh, really? I raised an eyebrow at Vivian. She pulled out an accounting book and handed it to me. I glanced through a few pages and then tossed it into Dennis's lap. Take a good look before you say another word. The color drained from Denise's and his father's faces. The ledger contained 7 years of business account statements and all the transactions from Denise's personal bank accounts. I didn't realize you were so calculating, Denise muttered. Sign the agreement and we'll file it today. Not in a million years. I've already transferred all my shares to my sister anyway. The company's not doing well. We just got a $230,000 loan from the bank, and I officially resigned from my dad's company last month. I have nothing now. You want to split something? Fine, split debt, $115,000 each. You want to leave with nothing. I looked at that man, that pathetic, blubbering mess, and then at Katie, who was sitting stiffly next to Anna like a debutante at a funeral. Oh yeah, just $200,000. That's manageable. But before we settle anything, I'm going to charge you for everything you spent on her. I said, pointing directly at Katie. Her face went pale. March 2022, house purchase $230,000. April 2022, new car $15,000. Designer bags, clothes, and shoes, another $3,000. I'm legally entitled to at least half of that. That's $137,500. After your share of the debt of $115,000, you still owe me $22,500. Katie instinctively grabbed her stomach. Pregnant. Of course she was. Dennis, honey, I think something's wrong. She whimpered in a shaky voice as she leaned into him. Danny looked like he wanted to shake her off and yell some more, but I cut him off. If you don't get moving, your little bundle of joy might not make it. He whipped his head around, shot me a murderous glare, and scrambled out the door with Katie in his arms. Baby, Anna muttered as she watched Denise and Katie disappear down the driveway. She turned to Lucas, their eyes met, and something passed silently between them. A sort of grim paternal truce. Determination hardened on their faces. Lucy, Anna began in a suddenly syrupy tone, look, there's no point in making this divorce complicated. Let's just end this peacefully, okay? Denise is still your child's father. You're just a part-time woman earning, what, maybe $4,000 a month? That's not enough to raise a child. She's going to need her father's help, right? Her red lips moved like a ventriloquist's dummy. I noticed a splotch of lipstick on her front tooth. Anna, you've got lipstick on your teeth. She grimaced, baring her teeth, and wiped blindly at herself with a napkin. It's still there, I said. The front tooth. Anna flushed and rubbed again. The bottom tooth, right in the middle, Vivian added dryly, pulling a tissue from her purse. Anna kept dabbing. Her face was a mess of frustration and fading concealer. There we go, all done, Vivian said with a professionally saccharine smile. Lucy, Anna continued, trying to recover, I'm telling you from experience. I know what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's better to just let go and move on. Excuse me, I said. I missed the part where you said something wise. I was too distracted watching your lipstick move all over your teeth. Lucy, I helped raise that child all these years. You helped? My voice went sharp. What nerve do you have saying that out loud? After I gave birth to Angela, you hired a substandard nanny and took your son on a tropical vacation for an entire month. Not a single call, not a single message. When you finally returned, the nanny was napping while Angela screamed with a rash and soiled diapers. Did you lift a finger? No. You just complained about your backache and how you couldn't see or hear properly. When my maternity leave ended, you hired a clueless temporary nanny to help. You know what you did? You spent the days at the spa. Angela got a 100-degree fever and the nanny panicked, called me crying, and quit on the spot. After that, Angela was with me always, right up until preschool. I turned to my mother in disbelief. She was red with anger, her fists clenched. This was a woman I'd never seen like this before. Growing up, my mother was the picture of silent endurance. Every time I would cry to her about Denise, she'd sigh and whisper things like, "That's just marriage, we all go through it." Or worse, "He's still your child's father." That kind of resignation had pushed me further and further away. But now there she was, standing there, spitting truth. Lucas opened his mouth to say something, but his phone rang. The volume was so loud it reverberated through the room. Even I could hear Denise's voice on speakerphone. Katie was 4 months pregnant. The baby was small, so she needed bed rest. They were told it was a boy. Anna began to move towards the door. Lucas grabbed her wrist and held her in place. At least the old man had some dignity left. Aren't you going to the hospital? I asked sarcastically. Your son is ruined. Someone has to pay the bills. Lucas winced. Then he stood up, grabbed his coat, and shuffled out the door with Anna right behind him. Dennis had played the rich kid card for years, but the truth was, he never had any money of his own. He was always in his dad's pocket. I'd covered more household expenses than they ever acknowledged. The money he used to spoil his mistress, Lucas couldn't ignore that. Ever since I gave birth to Angela, they'd been pressuring me to have another baby. Now that I saw them for what they really were, parasites with pearls, I knew. That second baby was never going to happen. This marriage was already over. Lucy, just get a divorce. I won't try to talk you out of it this time. Just do it. Leave him. My mother hugged me tight, her eyes red. My father remained silent next to us, hands clenched and his face unreadable. I called a moving company. I had no other choice anymore. Lucy, I've gone over the divorce agreement, Vivian said, handing me the document while I was still on the phone. Also, look at this. She pulled out a photograph. It was from last year's scholarship award ceremony hosted by Denise's company. Katie was in the back, standing right behind him, staring at his profile as if he were the sun. She was his scholarship student, Vivian said quietly. I stared at the photo for a second, and then I smiled. Let's go to the university. Dad, Mom, I turned to them. Help me pack everything. Angela's stuff, my jewelry, if it can be loaded, take it with us. Are you okay? Vivian asked softly, her eyes scanning my face. I'm fine, I replied with a small smile. And this time I meant it. There was a time when I wasn't. The first time I pulled a condom from his jacket pocket, I almost collapsed. I told myself it was just a careless mistake, that the spark had just gone out because we were an old marriage, that he still loved us, that this was normal, that people didn't live with passion every day. I kept lying to myself until the lies ran dry. He had someone else. He'd had someone else for a long, long time. I used to lie awake for hours going through every sweet memory and coating it with glitters of betrayal. There were nights I would stand outside his bedroom door with a knife, shaken, imagining what it would take to make him pay. He destroyed me. He destroyed this home. He took my warmth, my faith in love, my ability to trust, and over time the pain went numb. The wound closed, it didn't heal, it just left an ugly scar, but it wasn't bleeding anymore. What are we doing at the university? Vivian asked cautiously as we drove. I want to meet the faculty. I'm Denise's wife. I should have the right to see how his scholarship students are doing. Vivian looked at me, one part admiration, two parts concern. I promise, I'm fine. I'm not going to lose it. My anger is a weapon now, not something that devours me. I took the stack of papers from her. There was Katie again, frozen in time with a certificate in her hand, beaming with confidence and ambition. A girl in her prime. She reminded me of me. In college, I had that same sparkle, that same blind belief that the world would treat me fairly if I worked hard and loved purely. The campus was packed with students teeming with life, noise, and that unmistakable scent of youth. Vivian, do you remember when we used to laugh like that? I asked, tipping my head toward two girls walking ahead of us, arms slung around each other, giggling about something only they understood. Vivian smiled. Yeah, we were always glued at the hip, you with your red baseball jackets, 5 exact same ones, and you with those oversized flannel shirts. I laughed. The sound of our laughter faded into a quiet ache. I watched those girls disappear down the path, and I felt a twisting inside. Vivian, I whispered, I can't go back. The two girls rounded a corner and were gone, just like the version of me I used to be. And as much as I yearned for her, she was gone. Vivian gave my arm a soft pat. We had arrived. We clearly explained our purpose, and before long, we were ushered into an office to meet with the professor in charge of the scholarship program. Professor Jones, we just wanted to check in on the current scholarship students, I said in a warm but measured tone. We're also considering increasing funding, so we'd like to get a clearer sense of how the students are doing. This is our lawyer, Vivian. If we decide to draft a new agreement, she'll help with the legal work. I hope you don't mind. Of course not, Professor Jones exclaimed with a smile. How thoughtful. He enthusiastically pulled out several thick files and stacked them on the desk. His energy was brimming as he spoke with pride about the students. Look, Katie, for example, is an incredibly hardworking young woman. She's one of the top students in the literature department. She's even represented the university in competitions. These are her certificates of recognition. She also works part-time at the library and gets along with her classmates wonderfully, always helping others. She's very kind-hearted, a truly exceptional student. She plans to apply for a graduate degree, but of course, she has financial problems. He looked at me, eyes full of hope. He was a good educator, you could tell, an educator who really cared, who went to great lengths to open doors for kids who didn't have any. Students like Katie from humble families were lucky to have someone like him on their side. Well, I said, nodding kindly, how about we meet Katie? If she's truly as impressive as you say, we'd gladly consider more support. Oh, yes, of course. She should be in the library right now. Let me give her a call. He stepped aside to make the call. A few moments later, he returned with an apologetic air. I'm sorry, she says she's not feeling well and has taken the day off. Would it be possible to reschedule for another time? She's sick, I said, looking at Vivian. Well, then maybe we should visit her at the hospital. We're free today. Would you mind, Professor Jones? No, no, of course not. I'd love to go with you. He quickly informed the office staff of his plans and double-checked Katie's location. Then we all headed out. The whole way there, Professor Jones wouldn't stop praising Katie. How selfless she was, how sincere she was, how exceptional her character was. Vivian kept opening her mouth to interject, but each time I tried to stop her. Not yet. When we finally arrived at the hospital and opened the door to the room, Katie was lying on the bed, pale, clearly alone. Dennis, ever the coward, had already bailed. Katie, Professor Jones said kindly, this is Mrs. Lucy Howard, Mr. Dennis Howard's wife and co-founder of the Scholarship Fund. When she heard about your situation, she insisted on coming to see you. I know you've always dreamed of applying to medical school for a grad degree, right? Katie's face went white. Her hands trembled slightly. She could barely conceal the fear and silent pleading in her eyes. All the arrogance she'd shown at my doorstep was gone. Katie, I said, tilting my head, what's wrong with you? You look awful. I'm just sick with a cold, she stammered, grabbing the blanket and pulling it up to cover her stomach. A little fever, I'll be fine in a couple of days. A cold and a fever? Vivian stepped forward, her eyebrows arched. How strange, this entire floor is marked as obstetrics and gynecology. She poked her head into the hallway and then turned back to the room. Yep, maternity, big signs and everything. Professor Jones followed her, curious. He took a look as well, and the change in his face was immediate. Katie bit her lip so hard it went white. The hospital said the respiratory unit was full, she mumbled. So they temporarily put me here. Really? Vivian asked loudly with exaggerated concern. They're putting contagious patients on the same floor as newborns and pregnant women. That sounds so irresponsible to me. Her voice echoed down the hallway. The door was ajar behind us. Every word was heard. The moment the other families in the hallway heard that someone with a fever and a cold had been housed in the maternity ward, they swarmed like a flock of alarmed birds. Why on earth is there someone with the flu in our ward? My baby was born premature. What if she gets it? Are they really mixing sick patients with newborns? A young nurse, sweating bullets, was scrambling to keep the situation from getting out of hand. This floor was the VIP wing. Every patient was someone who could make her life a living hell. No, there must be a misunderstanding. The woman in room 333 is here for prenatal care. She went through all the usual screenings before she was admitted. There's no infection, I swear. Prenatal care, Vivian exclaimed with an over-the-top surprise. Are you sure she's just a student, a child? How is it possible she's here for prenatal care? Are you making this up to shut us up? You better not be lying to us. She wasn't yelling, but her voice was loud enough to carry down the hall, loud enough for every curious ear to lock in on the juicy tidbits. Professor Jones was frozen in the doorway as if he'd been hit by a bus. I, meanwhile, was sitting quietly next to Katie's bed, watching her turn pale. Fear turned to pleading to desperation, and desperation slowly transformed into something darker, hate. Katie, I said in a calm voice, what's going on here? Professor Jones's face was now ashen, his jaw set. Professor, I was raped, Katie stammered with tears streaming down her face before she even finished the sentence. I didn't want to tell anyone. Rape! Professor Jones's face flushed with fury. That's it, I'm calling the police. He grabbed his phone with trembling hands. 911, this is Professor Jones. One of my students just disclosed she was raped. We're at General Hospital, room 333. Please send someone immediately. No, Professor, please don't, Katie cried, shrinking back suddenly. I don't want anyone to know. I looked like a delicate flower caught in a storm, all wilted fragility and trembling innocence. Katie, we'll be discreet, but if you've been assaulted, you must report it. The law is here to protect you. Professor Jones patted her hand and stepped outside to make a follow-up call. What are you trying to do? Katie turned to us, her wide eyes filled with a mix of fury and fear. Justice, I said, giving her a gentle pat on the hand. Why don't you just leave me alone? She whispered. We love each other. What? I blinked. You and your rapist are in love? My God, do you really have Stockholm Syndrome? Vivian nodded solemnly and raised her voice slightly so the nosy people in the hallway could hear. Stockholm Syndrome is a psychological disorder, she said, where the victim begins to sympathize with their abuser. Over time, they may even feel affection, loyalty, or romantic attachment toward them. What we're witnessing here is a classic case. Just then, whispers rippled through the door. Did you hear? The girl in room 333 was raped, and now she's crazy. She's not here for prenatal care. She wants to keep the rapist's baby. What a mess. They say she fell in love with him. Stockholm Syndrome. No joke. Who's that woman inside with her? I don't know. A professor or something. Looks important. The officers arrived quickly. One of them, a middle-aged man with a tired look, motioned to Professor Jones, who immediately stepped forward. I was the one who made the call, he said. This is what happened. He laid out everything he knew, and the female officer stayed behind to question Katie privately, but didn't get much information. Katie just kept crying and muttering incoherently. Sir, the officer said to me, Mrs. Katie just told me she's in love with the man who allegedly assaulted her. I recorded the conversation. I pulled out my phone. Here's a recording of her saying the same thing. The officer took it, nodding sadly. They took down my ID and collected the record as evidence. She's experienced a severe trauma, the officer added. It's possible her judgment is impaired. Professor Jones grabbed the officer's arm. You have to catch that bastard. Promise me you won't let him get away. We won't, the officer said solemnly. We'll wait for Katie to stabilize, and then we'll take a sample for a DNA test. We'll find him, sir. No one is above the law. He gave Professor Jones a firm handshake. When we returned to the room, Katie was still crying. Tears streamed down her face as she frantically typed on her phone. Professor Jones sat next to her, murmuring words of comfort and rubbing her shoulder gently. She finally calmed down. That's when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of hurried footsteps outside the room. So that's what the frantic messaging was about, calling for backup. Lucia Dennis hadn't even reached the hospital room, and he was already screaming in the hallway. The rapist had arrived. Sometimes I sincerely worried about his IQ. Professor Jones, hearing the voice of the Scholarship Fund's co-founder, jumped to his feet and rushed into the hallway with me. Honey, you're here. I greeted Denis with an unusual warmth, tangling my arm with his, even as the smell of stale cologne and cheap whiskey turned my stomach. The professor was just telling me about a really exceptional student, I said sweetly. The poor thing went through something awful. She was assaulted and she's too scared to speak up. I've already offered her legal assistance, and I think we should create a new sponsorship plan just for her. She has so much potential. You got here at the perfect time. Dennis blinked, visibly stunned by the sudden shift in tone. He wasn't used to my warmth anymore, especially with witnesses. Mr. Howard, this is Katie, Professor Jones added, his voice thick with emotion. She's innocent, a brilliant and dedicated student. It's utterly heartbreaking what's happened to her. He took off his glasses to wipe his eyes, visibly moved. I gave Dennis's arm a gentle shake, dabbing theatrically at the corner of my eye. Let's help her, Denise, I said in a soft, shaky voice. No tears, of course. I wasn't that committed. Denis looked terrified, and for good reason. The trap was closing. Gradually, with the right tone and words, the scene unfolded for him. He finally caught on to the narrative, and he did not lack it. The realization that he'd just been publicly framed as a rapist spread across his face in stages. Confusion, denial, and then outright panic. And Katie, I added sweetly, everyone wants to help you. It's just that this child is a rapist's child. Do you really want to bring it into the world? It might ruin your future, and the child will grow up forever suffering with the burden of its origins truth. It's not too late. You're still in time. What the hell is wrong with you? Dennis snapped, his face pale. It's her decision, not yours. Dennis, I gasped in an innocent, betrayed tone. What are you saying? Katie's just a victim. Professor Jones cut me off, justified fury etched on his face. Mr. Howard, he said sharply, Katie is a student, a child. It is our duty to protect her from irreversible mistakes. Denny was shaking. His chest rose and fell with clenched fists. He was about to explode. And don't forget, I added sweetly. The police already said they're going to take a DNA sample from the baby to identify the rapist. It's a big step toward justice, isn't it? Dennis's eyes locked with mine, wide and burning with rage. Vivian stepped forward, reciting like an oracle. According to the state penal code, rape is defined as non-consensual sexual intercourse involving force, threat, or coercion. The penalty ranges from 3 to 10 years in prison. Aggravating circumstances can result in sentences greater than 10 years, including life in prison or even the death penalty. And that was the final trigger. Denny lunged at Katie's bed and grabbed her hair. Say it, tell them when the hell I raped you. Perfect. Even better than I'd imagined. And no, that's not it. I didn't mean it. They forced me to say it. Katie sobbed, grabbing Dennis's wrist as tears streamed down her face. What, you and Katie? I stumbled back, leaning against the wall, pretending to be devastated. Tears streamed down my cheeks. It wasn't real, of course, but it looked pretty convincing. Even I almost believed it. Katie, you, him, Professor? John clutched his chest and turned pale as a flash of lightning. No, Denis, tell me it's not true, I screamed, grabbing him by the shoulders and shaking him hard. Tell me that baby isn't yours. Tell me you're not a rapist. All the pain I'd buried for years, the humiliation, the betrayal, the silence, came to the surface in that instant. My screams were real. My fury was real. My acting was lethal. Dennis still had Katie by the hair, and every time I shook him, her head moved along with it. Katie moaned, too overwhelmed to speak, clutching his wrist as her pale face contorted in pain. Dennis broke. His free hand flew towards me. He was going to hit me, but I was ready. When his arm swung forward, I stumbled back, pretending to lose my balance, and pulled at the waistband of his pants. Then I dropped straight to the floor, so hard it almost bruised. A perfect, pitiful heap. Gasps rippled from the doorway. Dennis was wearing sweatpants today, so when I yanked at him mid-lunge, his leopard print underwear and his pale, flabby butt were suddenly on full display. Gasps rippled throughout the room. I burst into tears, pointing at him dramatically with a shaking hand. How could you do this to me? How could you? After all these years, I've worried about you, about the child. What did I do to deserve this? You two betrayed me like this. Dennis, momentarily stunned, scrambled to pull up his pants, fumbling with them like a sitcom villain caught in the middle of an affair. Vivian, ever efficient, had already opened the room door wide. Her phone camera recorded everything, from the crying breakdown to Denise's humiliation. In the hallway, nurses and onlookers had gathered, their eyes wide. My God, that's the one who funds the scholarship program. Did you hear what the girl said? She was willing. Ew, he must be 40, that's gross. Excuse me, officer, I was the one who filed the initial report, Vivian said softly, stepping forward. Now we have visual confirmation that this incident might be related to the assault. Here's the recording. What a rapist. What are you talking about? Denise's father, Lucas, burst into the room, his face flushed with indignation. He had come for his grandson, but now he was watching his legacy crumble. There's clearly been a misunderstanding, Lucas stammered, forcing a smile. We're good people. We've been donating to help underprivileged students for years. Sir, the officer said calmly, please sit down. We'll conduct a thorough investigation. If your son is innocent, that will come to light. But if he's not, he'll be held accountable. Lucas turned pale. This is all a family matter. This woman is just trying to blackmail us because we have money. She's slandering my son. He turned to Katie with clenched fists, lunging at her. Two officers immediately stepped in and pushed him back. Sir, you are interfering with the police investigation. Please sit down. This is a private family matter. What right do you have to interfere? Lucas yelled, trying to get past the police again. This is your second warning, Vivian said calmly, stepping forward. According to the law, obstructing a police officer in the performance of their duties carries a fine and up to 10 days of pretrial detention. May I continue? Lucas opened his mouth again, then closed it. He slumped into the nearest chair, glaring at Katie. Since Katie wasn't in a condition to move, the police took her statement right there in the room. She sobbed, trembling, telling them everything from the beginning. Their betrayal, the abuse, the spiral. My acting was so convincing I almost fainted from how real it looked. Denny clenched his jaw so hard I thought his molars would crack. But With two uniformed officers in the room, he didn't dare say much. Professor John sat slumped in a corner, completely disheartened. The brilliant scholarship student he'd so proudly championed had turned out to be a mistress, a liar, and a bombshell thrown directly into someone else's marriage. In the end, after the interrogation, the truth was revealed. Denny had been having an affair with Katie, the same student he sponsored. Katie was 4 months pregnant and had made up the rape story to protect her reputation and her future plans. When Denise's wife discovered the affair, he lost control and, in a fit of rage, assaulted them both, a domestic scandal now masquerading as criminal charges. Finally, the curtain fell. I got up, wiped my eyes, and threw the divorce agreement into Denise's lap. Sign it. The police were gone. All that was left was silence. His arrogance was gone. The affair was out. The violence was documented. The only thing left for him to fight for was money. I have nothing, he blurted out. I only have debt. I took another look at the agreement. I said calmly. He praised the document. Vivian revised it exactly as I instructed. Dennis Howard would not be responsible for child support. I, Lucy Howard, would not claim any in his name, nor would I assume any responsibility for marital debts incurred during our marriage. Denis laughed bitterly and shot me a triumphant look, as if he had just won a prize he didn't know he was competing for. Don't come crawling back, he warned. You'll regret this, I smiled. You've said that before. He signed with a flourish. Vivian reviewed it and nodded. We agreed to finalize everything at the courthouse at 9:30 the next morning. It was done. All the paperwork was finalized quickly. I moved back in with my parents. Angela, primarily raised by my mother and me from the beginning, adjusted surprisingly well to life without her father. There was a brief scandal on the internet about Katie, but the university covered it up before it could gain traction. Move-in day had its own drama. Dennis's mother tried to take my jewelry. She literally broke into my safe without permission. Too bad for her, I'd already changed the combination. Unable to open it, she tried to take the whole thing. Unfortunately for her, the safe weighed more than it looked. It fell on her foot, shattering the bones. To top it off, Anna is diabetic. Could they save her foot? Well, that's up to fate. Dennis and his father hired a nurse for her, left her at the hospital, and haven't checked on her since. When I told my mother, she rolled her eyes. Your father and I were blind, she scoffed. I thought that woman was decent. Turns out she's just a world-class actress, always complaining about her ailments. Well, she got what she wanted now. It's okay, Mom, I bet. We're moving into the new house in a few days. Do you think they'll come looking for trouble? That woman was so cheap she'd tear paper towels in half to make them last longer. They won't be back. She looked at me suspiciously but said nothing. Said, whatever you decide from now on. Then she finally said, your father and I fully support you. You're never alone. Thank you, I whispered. What they didn't know was that I had already signed with a new publisher. I was now a full-time writer. Writing novels part-time provided a steady income. My days were becoming more and more quiet, stable, and free. Honey, the investigation is underway, Vivian told me over coffee one afternoon. It should be in the news in a few days. Solid evidence, I asked. Solid as a rock, believe me, I smiled. Dennis had spent years living recklessly, convinced he would never face consequences. His car repair business had grown not just because of his skill, but also because of shortcuts, fraud, and secret deals. They cut corners, sold shoddy work, laundered money with corrupt officials, buried competitors using every dirty trick in the book. Every single act is enough to send him away. How long do you think it will last? Minimum 3 years if you're lucky. 3 years, that's it. After he stole 7 years of my life, I laughed. 7 years of my youth, and he gets away with 3 on minimum security. What about Katie? They already sent the photo. It should be popular any minute now. Once Katie sent me a hotel photo with Denise and her trying to provoke me. What she hadn't noticed was the bottom of the curtain, where another man's feet and slippers were visible. I'd been saving that. You sent it exactly as I egged, she confirmed. Zoomed in, printed, a red circle around the slippers. Then I had someone tip Denise off while Katie was with that guy. He caught them in the act. I nodded in approval and she was thrown out. She decided to have the baby a long time ago, but word is Denis doesn't want to marry her. His parents just want the baby. And Katie agreed. Oh, yeah, she agreed, supposedly for $100,000. The deal is to have the baby and get a paternity test. The man in the hotel photo was her high school boyfriend. He financed her studies for years, but when Katie went to college and got a taste for the flashy life, he couldn't keep up. He got into gambling to make ends meet. Katie left him, then she latched on to Denis. I listened in silence as Vivian told me everything. I realized that a lot of life comes down to personal choices. There are those who seek power, others who seek love, others who seek shortcuts. I was done chasing anything, and I was certainly done looking back. After we moved into our new house, it felt like life had finally hit the restart button. Angela adjusted to her new school with ease. She made friends quickly and came home radiant with joy every day. Mommy, she would often say, our new house is so pretty, so warm. Seeing her laugh like that, I felt something inside me slowly healing. I was reclaiming a strength I didn't know I had lost. Vivian kept up with Denis's financial crimes case, following every development. 6 months later, he was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. His assets were seized to pay debts. As for Katie, after she gave birth, the paternity test revealed the baby wasn't Denis's. The news shattered her. Denis's family turned on her instantly, treating her like a plague. Her parents, exhausted by the scandal and unable to continue supporting her, took her and the baby back to the countryside. She disappeared from our lives forever, and I went back to writing, this time pouring my truth onto every page. I focused on stories about women and families, about heartbreak and rebirth. My first novel, inspired by the ruins of my marriage and the story of how I rebuilt myself, took off within months. It became a bestseller. The movie rights sold almost immediately. I suddenly became a full-time writer with a stable income and complete financial independence. Vivian remained my support. She visited often to review contracts, chat over tea, exchange gossip. Angela started calling her Mom Vivian, a nickname that melted both of us. Sometimes I think if it weren't for Vivian, maybe I never would have made it out of the darkness. With the royalties from my books, I bought my parents a small house on the outskirts of the city, a cozy cottage surrounded by flowers and fruit trees. Angela loved to run through the garden after school, barefoot and free. And sometimes late at night, when the world is calm and quiet, I think about that 2 a.m. text message from a stranger. If it weren't for that message, maybe I would have stayed in that sinking marriage, silently drowning for years. I feel like everything came full circle, every wound, every betrayal, every lie. It all pushed me toward a better life. Goodbye, Dennis. Goodbye, past. I'm finally free. Did you enjoy my story? From which city are you listening? Let's meet in the comments. I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks, which helps me continue bringing you more stories. Thank you sincerely for your kind support. On the screen, you'll find 2 more life stories that I highly recommend. There is so much more waiting for you on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.